It was a Tuesday morning, the sort of morning Ethel Robinson cherished. The sun was slicing through the lace curtains in her living room, illuminating a universe of dancing dust motes. A proper cup of tea, loose leaf, in a fine bone china cup, steamed on the doily beside her. The clock on the mantel, a wedding gift from 1962, ticked a reliable, comforting rhythm. All was right in her world. That is, until the phone rang. Not the cheerful trill of her mobile, which usually meant photos of her great-grandson, but the stern, old-fashioned bleat of her landline, the one only telemarketers, official bodies, and her friend Marjorie, who still refused to get with the digital program ever used. "Hello," Ethel answered, her voice warm as a knitted blanket. What came next was a voice dripping with manufactured panic. "Grandma, Grandma, it's me." It was a young man, his words tumbling over each other in a desperate rush. "It's your grandson. I'm in so much trouble." Ethel's heart, a sturdy organ that had weathered a war, raising 3 children, and the great microwave incident of '89, gave a familiar, weary sigh. She had one grandson, Liam, and Liam, bless him, called her Nana Ethel, and had a voice that had settled into a baritone 5 years ago. This voice was higher, reedy, and it called her Grandma. Everyone knew she was a Nana. "Oh dear," Ethel said, her tone carefully neutral. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her tea. "Which one is this, love? You sound all clogged up." "It's Liam," the voice insisted, a hint of frustration seeping through the panic. "I was in a car with a friend, and the police, they found something in the car. They arrested me. I need bail money, Grandma, or I'm going to jail. My phone is about to be taken. You have to talk to my lawyer." Ethel's eyes drifted from her tea to the framed photo on the sideboard. There was Liam, aged 7, covered in mud and grinning next to a wonky sandcastle. The real Liam was currently, according to his Instagram, which she'd checked that very morning, just keeping an eye on things, dear, had posted a story about a particularly fascinating sea slug. A cold, hard knot of anger began to form beneath her cardigan. This person was trying to exploit the very thing that was her life's work, her love for her family. He was counting on the flutter of a grandmother's heart to override the common sense she'd honed over 8 decades. He thought she was soft, a easy mark, just a little old lady waiting to be swindled. But Ethel Robinson was not just any little old lady. She was a woman who had hand-churned butter during rationing, who had out-negotiated 3 used car salesmen, and who once made a councilman backtrack on a bin collection policy by bringing a victorious sponge to the town hall meeting. Her sweetness, like the icing on that sponge, had a firm foundation. Instead of hanging up, a plan, beautiful and simple, blossomed in her mind. It was time to have some fun. "Oh, my poor lamb," Ethel exclaimed, laying the concern on thicker than jam. "Arrested? What on earth was in the car?" It doesn't matter," the scammer lawyer hybrid sputtered, thrown off by the question. "The point is, I need $9,800 in bail. You need to wire it right now. My lawyer, Mr. Henderson, is going to give you the details. The police are right here." "Before we get to all that, dear, since I've got you, I need your opinion on something terribly important. It's been keeping me up at night." A long pause. The scammer, whose script clearly didn't include Grandma's midnight worries, was trapped. If he played along, he kept her on the hook. "Okay, what is it?" Ethel leaned forward, as if a phone itself was a dear friend. It's about the Lamingtons for the Legacy Lodge bake-off on Saturday. Silence. Then a hesitant, the what? Lamingtons, Ethel repeated, as if it was the most obvious word in the world. The Australian cake squares, sponge dipped in chocolate icing, rolled in desiccated coconut. Your favourite, or they used to be. Oh, yeah, those. They're fine, the scammer mumbled, utterly lost. Fine? Ethel's voice rose in theatrical devastation. Liam, you said they were clouds from heaven when you were 12. You ate 6 at Colin Murphy's birthday and were sick in the hydrangeas. How can they just be fine? My tastes changed. Grandma, the money. But here's the real dilemma. Ethel barreled on, her tone now that of a general planning a siege. The recipe. Do I use Janet Ferguson's recipe, which calls for a tablespoon of golden syrup in the sponge, or do I stay true to my mother's 1954 version, which uses plain caster sugar, but a dash of vanilla bean paste in the icing? The man on the other end of the line made a sound like a deflating balloon. I don't. Just use the old one. Ah, Ethel pounced. But Mother's icing recipe is where the controversy lies. She insisted the chocolate must be melted with a knob of butter, not margarine, and she was adamant you must let the sponge sit for a full day before dipping, or it'll absorb too much icing and become soggy. What's your stance on soggy lamingtons, Liam?
I hate them, the scammer suddenly yelled, his professional facade crumbling under the weight of coconut. I hate them, and I need the money now. Ethel clicked her tongue, the sound echoing down the line like a judge's gavel. Well, that's a shame, because the real Liam, she said, her voice dropping all pretense, now cold and clear as a winter's morning, adores them, and he's currently learning about sea cucumbers, not sitting in a police car. You, young man, are a very poor imposter. There was a string of expletives so blue it would have made Ethel's late husband, Frank, blush. Then a slam. The dial tone hummed. Ethel gently placed the receiver back in its cradle. She took another sip of her tea. It was still perfectly warm. But the story doesn't end with a hung-up phone. Oh no, the fury of a wronged Nana is a powerful force. Ethel didn't just call the authorities, which she did after finishing her tea and noting the number. She called Marjorie. Marjorie called the Bridge Club. The Bridge Club alerted the Thursday Gardening Society. By noon, a network of silver-haired sleuths was activated across the county. They weren't hacking databases. They were doing something far more effective, sharing information. Old Mr. Peterson from number 24 remembered a suspicious white van lingering near the postbox. Susan from the charity shop recalled a young man nervously buying a prepaid mobile card and asking too many questions. They pooled these fragments of everyday observation, the very skills honed from a lifetime of noticing whose curtains were drawn too late, which bin was put out on the wrong day, and built a picture. Ethel, armed with this intelligence and her own steely resolve, became a one-woman disruption campaign. For the next week, whenever the scammer called, and he tried from different numbers, his voice tight with rage, she was ready. Call number 2, he posed as a police sergeant. Ethel interrogated him on the proper procedure for filing a missing knitting needle report, then asked if his mother used corn flour in her gravy. Call number 3, he was a bank fraud investigator. She expressed deep concern that the bank's font on their letters had changed from a dignified Times New Roman to a frivolous Arial, and surely that was the root of the security issue. Call number 4, he simply breathed heavily down the line. Ethel, without missing a beat, said, "If you're calling about the extension on the Anderson account, the quarterly reports are with Higgins in auditing. Do try to keep up, dear." Then she played a 3-second clip of a barking dog, her friend Beryl's corgi Kevin, into the receiver. The humor here wasn't just for her own amusement, though the twinkle in her eye could have powered a lighthouse. It was a weapon. It turned the scammer's fear factory into a farce. It drained his power and gave hers back tenfold. The final act came from the most unexpected quarter, the local community center's Tech for Seniors class, run by a patient teenager named Chloe. Using the phone numbers Ethel and her network had collected, Chloe helped them report them en masse to the official Scam Watch websites. They learned about call blocking apps designed for landlines. They turned their collective wisdom into a digital fence. The scam calls to Ethel's circle dwindled, then stopped. They'd been routed, blocked, and generally annoyed into oblivion. That Saturday, Ethel Robinson stood at the Legacy Lodge bake-off. Before her, on a doily-covered trestle table, sat a pristine plate of lamingtons. They were perfect. The sponge was light, the chocolate icing was a deep, glossy brown, and the coconut clung like fresh snow. She didn't win first prize. That went to Betty Carmichael's sherry trifle, which was widely considered a tactical use of alcohol. But as she handed out the lamingtons to her friends, she received a different kind of award. "Heard you gave that telephone bandit what for, Ethel?" boomed old Arthur, giving her a wink. "Served him right trying it on with you." Marjorie squeezed her arm. "Our own Secret Service, darling, the Knitting Circle KGB." As she bit into a lamington, the subtle vanilla bean paste singing on her tongue, Ethel felt a profound sense of victory. It wasn't just about outsmarting a criminal, it was about proving that the qualities often dismissed in her generation, caution, tradition, a reliance on community gossip, even a stubborn obsession with cake recipes, were not weaknesses. They were a deep, complex system of checks and balances, a lifetime of BS detection. The scammers relied on speed, on panic, on the digital distance of a wire transfer. They didn't understand the slow, powerful currency of a shared memory, of a familiar voice, of knowing someone's true favorite cake. They didn't account for the formidable fortress of a life fully lived. So the next time your phone rings with an urgent, fearful voice, remember Ethel. Take a breath. Ask a question only your real grandson would know. Ask about the lamingtons. Ask about the gravy. Ask about the summer of the dodgy knee and the wonky sandtassel. And then share the story. Laugh about it with your friends. Build that network, because sometimes the best defense against the cold, faceless scams of the modern world is a warm, familiar, and fiercely guarded memory, and the unwavering belief that a good sponge cake should never, ever be soggy.